In this video, I am going to show some of the tools in HyperMesh for quick and efficient editing of a 2D mesh. First tool that I'm going to show can be found in the Elements ribbon, and it's called Replicate. When you click on the tool, go ahead and take a look at the little video. This gives you an indication of the selection type of entities for the tool, the way it behaves, and what the desired outcome is. We can also click the double arrows to get a more descriptive detail of the tool, what the selection is, what the method of selection is, and some of the options within the tool. And as always, hit F1 to show help to get more detail. The hamburger menu here on the left shows our advanced options, and our input is elements. So let's go ahead and just grab one of these ribs. I'm going to hold down Alt to get the quick selection of by face and hit move. And now I've got some new micro dialogues that have input for me. So the first thing, and probably the most important thing, is the manipulator. That is going to be how I move or translate this selected entity. The translation can be in a vector, it can be in a plane, or it can be about an axis. So that it's crucial that you get this manipulator in the correct position and in the correct orientation. So for me, I probably want to align it along this flange. So hold down Shift, it turns orange. Make sure you grab the origin of the manipulator, and you can see it starts snapping all by itself. So I'm going to snap it to the base, and then hold down Shift again, make sure it turns orange, and maybe grab the vector arrow tip, and that's going to allow me to drag it directly in that direction. My next micro dialog gives me the number of instances. We'll just start with one, and some other options. To flip it about a plane, in this case, I solely want to translate it in a direction. So I can click on the vector and start dragging. I can either use snaps, and that's going to be based on the position of that manipulator, or I can input a value directly, or if I hold down Alt, this disables snap, so it's a little bit freer to move. I can kind of put it right in between this element, so you can see when I hit replicate, it does end up stitching it in. So we have an equivalence to mesh. Let's play with some of the other options. Let's play with the instancing option. So let's do multiple. I can pick it again with my Alt, and I can say move, get our manipulator in the right spot, make sure it's orange. And if you don't grab it the first time, that's fine. You can always undo. And you can see as I start grabbing it, I can actually start adding instances to it after the fact. And we can kind of position it where we want. Maybe we want them all in between here. And as you can see, as they get further away from the original, based on the geometry, we start getting some penetration. But I'll show you that that's going to be just okay. If I hit replicate, it stitches it in, and it actually snips off whatever was penetrating. So that's the use of the replicate tool. Next tool that we're going to look at is in the geometry ribbon, and it's called the cut hole tool. But what's unique about this is I'm actually not going to cut a hole in any geometry. I'm actually going to cut a hole in my mesh directly. I don't have any 2D geometry, I just have a mesh. So I want to add some holes to this mesh, maybe in each of these corners. So I'm going to select my element. I can hold down Alt again, or I can go spacebar, brings up the advanced selection, and I can say by face here as well. Okay, I can pick my geometry type. So in this case, I want a circle. Place it right there. And add our input type. Let's do 2. In this case, a radius of 2. I can say add circle. And then over here, maybe we'll do a radius of 3 and say add. And then we cut. And that cuts a hole in our mesh. Now, we could have used the rebuild option. And I am going to showcase that next. But we could have done that with this tool as well. So rebuild is found in mesh, and it's useful for element quality, cleaning up elements, but also adding some features or removing features from your mesh, not from geometry. And these are based on 2 files, criteria and parameter. Criteria is going to be based on element quality. So I have a target element size and all my element quality options. And for parameter, it's got a number of different types of cleanup tolerancing and different feature, how it handles different features. So we're going to just focus on this holes and circle. We'll start from scratch. So the inputs for this are we add a row and we need a range. So again, my hole was 2 and 3 radius. Let's say we actually wanted to get rid of this hole. We can say remove. Between 0 and 2.5, remove. Then add another row. Say between 2.5 and 5, let's have a washer. And I can specify the number of elements. I can either give it just minimum. This means minimum of 4, but it's going to use whatever the target element size is. So in our case, it's 2. This auto is also going to use the target element size, and this auto even is going to use the target element size, but make sure that you have an even number. We could put it at 12 because right now this has about 8, so I want to be able to show the difference. And then washer type, so we can have a radial, we could have multiple washers, and washers are either a input value for the size of that washer, the thickness of that washer from the edge of the hole. Auto is going to use the target element size, otherwise a value times radius. So it could be 1 times the radius, it could be double the radius, and then a value minus the radius. Essentially, it would be the total radius from the center of the hole to the outside of the washer. Let's do 1. That way we can kind of tell the difference between our normal mesh and this mesh. I can say OK. And then pick my elements and hit rebuild. And just like that, our hole that had the radius less than 2.5 was removed and remeshed, and the hole with the radius of 3 has 12 elements around it and a washer with 1. So let's go ahead and look at our last tool for editing a mesh. We're looking at some simple morphing, some very simple morph commands. I'm going to use free morph. There's 3 main things that you need to know about morphing, 3 main entities. Your moving nodes, your anchor nodes, and everything in between. So move is what you're going to move, anchor is what's not moving, everything else in between moves. But the distance from the move or the distance from the anchor is called this biasing. And that's how you kind of control that accordion up and down movement between fixed and moving. So let's go ahead and pick our nodes, and we can go and say we can hit spacebar to get advanced. I can say by path, show preview. If I hold down Alt, I get this nice preview. And let's say I just want to raise these tabs, and I want the slots to come with it in that position. So I'm moving the tabs. What do I want fixed? Let's say I want the whole flange fixed. This I don't want to move. And what do I want to move? Well, pretty much everything else. So I can hold down Alt and pick all my other ribs. So what this should do is lift this by the tabs, and everything else should come with it. I am going to position my manipulator in something that makes sense for me. So I want to move it vertically. So let's position it nicely vertically like this. So as I drag this, you can see nodes closer to the moving nodes get stretched a little bit more. And these are all kind of fixed in between. So we can save that, and if we don't like this mesh, we can always go ahead and rebuild it again. In fact, we could probably just grab everything and say rebuild. And now we've got this brand new, completely revamped model and mesh.